calm, meditative, and quietly hopeful, like a wise grandmother sharing tea and life wisdom. Warm without being overly cheerful, grounded without being heavy. There's a Japanese tea ceremony I once watched where the master spent 3 minutes just preparing the water, not rushing, not cutting corners, just being present with each small step. And I thought, this is exactly how we should think about retirement. Nobody wants to hear this, but retirement saving isn't built in the exciting moments. It's built in the quiet, boring, consistent ones, the ones that feel like nothing is happening. Today, we're talking about the tea ceremony approach to retirement, where small, intentional contributions become something beautiful over decades. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by retirement advice or guilty that you're not doing enough, this is for you. Let's slow down together. Most retirement advice sounds like this: max out your 401k, invest aggressively, retire at 40. And if you're 28 with student loans and rent, that advice feels like someone shouting at you from a mountaintop you can't even see. Here's the truth they don't tell you. The people who retire comfortably aren't the ones who made dramatic moves. They're the ones who made small moves consistently for a very long time. It's not glamorous, it's not Instagram-worthy, but it works. Think about compound interest not as a math formula, but as a garden. You plant a seed today. You water it weekly. You don't dig it up to check if it's growing. And 30 years later, you have a tree. So let's start with the first principle of tea ceremony saving: presence over performance. You don't need to contribute huge amounts. You need to contribute consistently, even if it's small. $50 a month feels like nothing, doesn't it? It feels embarrassing to even mention it in a world where finance gurus talk about six-figure investments. But $50 a month invested from age 25 to 65 with average market returns becomes around $90,000. Not from being clever, not from taking risks, just from showing up. The tea ceremony master doesn't rush the water to make it boil faster. She trusts the process. Here's what this looks like practically. Open a retirement account if you haven't already. In the US, that's usually an IRA or 401k. In the UK, a pension scheme. Check what's available where you live. Don't get paralyzed by choosing the perfect investment. Target date funds are literally designed for people who don't want to think about this constantly. You pick the year you might retire, and the fund automatically adjusts as you age. It's the closest thing to autopilot that exists. Set up automatic contributions. This is non-negotiable. The same day your paycheck hits, a portion goes to retirement. You never see it, so you never miss it. Start with whatever doesn't make you panic. If that's 3% of your income, start there. You can increase it later. The second principle: seasonal adjustments. In a tea ceremony, different seasons call for different preparations. Summer tea is served cool and refreshing. Winter tea is warm and comforting. Your retirement contributions can have seasons too. Maybe you start at 3% in your first job. That's spring. You're just planting seeds. When you get a raise, increase your contribution by 1%. You won't even notice it because you never had that money in your budget anyway. That's summer. Your garden is growing and you're giving it a bit more water. If you have a hard month and you need to pause contributions, that's okay. That's autumn. Things slow down sometimes. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is not quitting entirely. Even a tree rests in winter, but it doesn't die. It's still there, roots deep, waiting for spring. Here's something nobody tells you about retirement savings. The first 10 years feel pointless. You'll log into your account and see maybe a few $1,000s after years of contributing. It feels wrong. It feels like it's not working. This is the hardest part. This is where most people quit. But this is also where the magic is hiding, underground, invisible, getting ready. Compound interest doesn't really kick in until year 15 or 20.
That's when the money you invested early starts making its own money, which makes more money, which makes more money. The tea ceremony master spends years learning to pour water at the exact right angle. It looks simple. It's not. Your early contributions are your training. They feel small because they are small, but they're teaching you the discipline you'll need later. Let's talk about guilt. Maybe you're 35 and you haven't started. Maybe you're 42 and you paused for 5 years and feel like you've ruined everything. Here's the truth. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. You cannot fix the past. You can only work now. If you start at 35 instead of 25, you'll need to contribute a bit more to catch up. That's just math. But you can still build something meaningful. A 10-year-old tree is still a tree. It still provides shade. It's still worth planting. The third principle, simplicity over complexity. The tea ceremony uses very few tools: a bowl, a whisk, a scoop. That's it. Your retirement strategy should be the same. You don't need 5 different investment apps. You don't need to day trade. You don't need cryptocurrency side hustles. You need one retirement account, automatic contributions, a simple, diversified investment like a target date fund or index fund. That's it. The financial industry makes money by convincing you it's complicated, that you need their special tools, their premium advice, their exclusive strategies. You don't. The most successful retirement savers use the most boring strategies. They automate, they ignore the noise, and they let time do the work. Here's something beautiful about this approach. It works regardless of your income. If you make $35,000 a year, contributing 5% means something different than if you make $100,000. But the principle is the same. Small, consistent, automatic, long-term. Someone making less will have a smaller total amount, but they'll still have something, and something is infinitely better than nothing. There's no shame in a modest retirement fund. There's only shame in not trying at all because you thought it had to be perfect. The tea ceremony doesn't require expensive matcha. It requires presence and intention. Your retirement doesn't require a huge income. It requires consistency and patience. Let's address the fear underneath all of this. What if the market crashes? What if I invest and lose everything? What if I'm doing it wrong? Here's the honest answer. The market will crash multiple times before you retire. That's not a possibility, that's a certainty. But here's what history shows us. The market has always recovered. Sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes 5, but it recovers. And if you're investing for 30 or 40 years, those crashes are just storms. They're scary when you're in them, but they pass. The tea ceremony master doesn't panic when the water is too hot. She waits, she lets it cool, she trusts the process. You do the same. When the market drops, you keep contributing. You're buying investments on sale. And when it recovers, which it will, you benefit. Here's your simple action plan. 1. Open a retirement account this week, not someday, this week. 2. Set up automatic contributions of any amount that doesn't make you panic. Even $25 a month is a start. 3. Choose a target date fund or a simple index fund. Don't overthink it. 4. Commit to increasing your contribution by 1% whenever you get a raise. 5. Don't check your balance obsessively. Once every 6 months is enough. 6. If you have to pause contributions due to an emergency, that's okay, but restart as soon as you can. That's it. That's the whole strategy. I know this feels too simple. We live in a culture that says if something isn't complicated, it can't be valuable. But the tea ceremony has existed for 500 years, and it's still just hot water and tea leaves. Some truths are simple because they're true, not because they're easy. Your retirement doesn't need to be a source of anxiety. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to exist. 30 years from now, you won't remember the fancy dinners you skipped to contribute an extra $50, but you'll remember the peace of mind you have because you trusted the process. Small steps, consistent presence, patience with the seasons. That's the tea ceremony approach, and it works.